don't know what's with these problems. I just wailing on a brother. Suffer don't they loud, don't be calling on my father. Daddy over jar, please save me from myself. I know this always talking isn't good for my health. Every day I walk in my dreams.
Black Esper is a multidisciplinary artist who channels his creativity to focus on mindfulness and just developing a state of mind around the arts and around how his life is influenced by society and his craft, really. And I think generally that is how I am trying to shape my message and my art form into the world, like trying to portray it in a way that shapes thinking and sees living as a practice of becoming. What I mean by seeing living as a practice of becoming is every day as humans we're changing. We're learning new things about the world, about ourselves, about our perspectives, and also your life is really determined wholly by yourself and your thoughts. Like your perspective determines your life. So every single day your experiences gradually shapes your perspective, and that gradually shapes your life. And that is something, because initially I got drawn to art basically naturally, like from when I've been a kid, right? I've just always been very artistic, always maybe coming up with a story, trying to paint something, trying to mold something out of clay, or just trying to make a story with my friends and just act it out, right? So when I became an adult, I was like, okay, what do I want to do in my life? And there's a lot of talk about following your passions and do what really feels right to you. And naturally, art was felt like that was the right thing. So I was drawn to like music, drawn to photography, drawn to film. And as I gradually started to practice in one way or the other, started seeing that it was mainly an expression of my thoughts that coming through to life. Like it became a way for me to just express things that I couldn't necessarily say with words. And even something I believe most artists would be able to relate to is that with your art sometimes it's like you're speaking to yourself. Like even though yes, sometimes you're making art to speak to other people, to influence other people, even maybe not necessarily that's the core of it, but at the end of the day, as an artist, you're making it for yourself. That's like the primary thing. So when I started learning more about myself through the art, that's when I started like realizing all these things I'm talking about. Like it's more about learning how I think and shaping that process. So that's why I said that and that is my life as an artist, right? But this applies to everyone. You could be an accountant, an engineer, a doctor, whatever you're doing, right? Your experiences in terms of how your job or how you interact with people or what you consume is gradually shaping your life, shaping your thoughts, shaping what influences you, what you like, and all of that. So me as an artist, basically I can only speak from the perspective of an artist, right? So as an artist, I do that as well heavily through my art, like learning more about myself, communicating that with others and with myself as well. Okay, it depends, because depends on where I'm at when I'm making the story, right? At different points in time, you're trying to leave different things with people. But as I've said, like the main core of everything is just learning to think or learning to seize life for yourself, not necessarily just dwelling on the influence of like others or society, because a lot of the time we are taught how to think. We are taught like, okay, this is what is right, this is what is wrong, this is how you should be, especially like those social constructs where we are put in boxes really. So I feel like one thing I'm trying to communicate through my art as a whole, through my being as a whole, is that you can be whatever you choose to be. And also, nothing is fixed. You decide everything. Everything is based on you. So I think at the core of all forms of art, any medium, whatever, that's the message. Like really, you can do whatever you want, you can think however you want, you can make your life into whatever you want to be. So you don't necessarily have to remain static. So yeah, I think that's the core of it. People think in many different ways, right? Why it is important to me to communicate honestly. It might sound a bit selfish if I say it this way, but realistically, I want that to be true, and I believe it's true, right? So the only way to really legitimize that in my head and in my life is by being an embodiment of it. So whatever you know to be true, you choose to be true, it only really becomes true for you if you live that reality, if you bring that into reality. So that is what it is for me as well. So even though yes, I'm trying to influence other people and be like, okay, you can do this, but if I'm telling you and I'm not living it, like, what is this guy saying, right? So I need to embody that. So that's why it's very important for me, because if I want that to be true for myself, I need to communicate it into the world. I need to be a symbol of that onto other people and onto the world, and impose that will and be like, yes, this is true, just look at me. I'm doing it, right? So yeah, that kind of thing. It's a lot of things. As I said, like everything, you pick up different influences as you go through life. So if I say my younger years, one of the biggest influences for that for me was what I consumed. Like, I consumed a lot of cartoons, movies, shows that always push that message of, oh, you can be who you want to be. You can you can really follow your passions. You can like embrace life the way you want it to be. And as I said, I've always been a creative person. So just noticing that these things were the things I felt necessarily drawn to just made me always consider that possibility. And I would have to give credit to my parents as well in some way, because while definitely yes, they can be very traditional in some ways, they still like gave me that like piece of advice, or just push that notion in my mind that like you can do anything, like just you can do anything. I mean, though when I did start to do it, there was a bit of conflict, but we're not getting into that right now. But yeah, I would say, that messaging being seen in like things I consumed, and just hearing that from people that were important to me made me feel like, yeah, I really can do anything, and I started pushing that. And also, when I did begin the process of it, because it's easy to start, and then because there's always going to be a ton of challenges, right? It's easy to start and fall off. It's very easy. I've seen it happen like over and over and over and over. And I'm not going to say I myself haven't fallen off sometimes, right? Because we're just human. But what I would say is I've never felt truer with myself than when I am doing some piece of form of art. Like when I'm practicing this thing, when I'm really living it, that's when I feel like, okay, I really feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. Life feels fun, life feels true, life feels like, okay, this is what life should be like, as opposed to when I'm doing some other thing that doesn't feel aligned, and then in that moment it feels like, okay, something is wrong, this just feels difficult, this just feels heavy, this just doesn't feel like me, if that makes sense. So, and I feel like once you find that, you just know that that's the way it is. So, unless you just want to pretend and lie to yourself, right? But yeah.